Flames and smoke filled the Colosseum air as the once mighty arena turned into a war zone. The Zyrak nobles, who had been laughing moments ago, were now screaming in terror. Panic spread like wildfire as alien beasts, once caged and helpless, now roamed free, attacking their former masters. The Colosseum, built to entertain the elite with brutal blood sports, had become a battlefield. Elias stood in the center of it all, gripping a stolen Zyrak rifle, his breathing heavy but controlled. Beside him, Max growled, his fur bristling, ready to fight again. They had done the impossible. They had turned the game against their captors. But they were not safe yet. The guards had finally shaken off their shock and were regrouping. Dozens of armored Zyrak warriors poured into the arena, their weapons raised. Energy rifles hummed as they powered up, and sharp alien blades gleamed under the Colosseum's flickering lights. The soldiers were bigger, stronger, and heavily armed. Elias had only one advantage. He refused to die here. A high-ranking officer stepped forward, his golden armor glinting under the firelight. His sharp reptilian face twisted in disgust as he looked at Elias. "You think this changes anything, human?" he snarled. "You are still nothing. A pet-playing soldier." Elias didn't answer. Words wouldn't save him now. Action would. The Zyrak officer raised his hand, ready to give the order to fire. Elias moved first. His stolen rifle blazed to life, sending a rapid burst of plasma bolts into the ranks of the approaching guards. The first shot slammed into the officer's chest, sending him sprawling backward. The second hit another guard, dropping him instantly. The Zyrak hesitated, not expecting the human to be so fast. That hesitation cost them. Elias dove behind a fallen pillar, using it as cover while he fired more shots. Max was already moving, weaving through the chaos. He lunged at the nearest guard, sinking his teeth deep into the alien's arm. The Zyrak roared in pain, trying to shake him off, but Max was relentless. Another explosion rocked the Colosseum as one of the giant beast cages collapsed, sending a massive four-legged predator charging into the stands. It crashed into the noble seats, its claws tearing through alien flesh like paper. Screams filled the air. The once mighty Zyrak nobility was in full retreat. Elias reloaded, ducking as plasma fire tore through the stone around him. They were still outnumbered. He needed a way out. Fast. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. Then he saw it. Near the far end of the arena, a massive reinforced gate led to the underground tunnels where they had kept the beasts before their fights. If he and Max could reach it, they might have a chance. But the Zyrak weren't going to let him escape that easily. A deep, rumbling growl echoed across the Colosseum. The ground shook as something massive stepped forward. From the other side of the arena, a Zyrak warbeast emerged from the wreckage. Standing at least 10 feet tall, covered in thick armored plating, the monstrous creature had 4 muscular arms and a face like a twisted nightmare. It let out a guttural roar, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Elias clenched his jaw. Of course they had something like this. The warbeast's handler, a Zyrak soldier in heavy armor, grinned. "Now you die, human." He barked a command in his alien tongue, and the beast charged. Elias barely had time to react. He rolled to the side as the warbeast's massive fist smashed into the ground, shattering the stone where he had stood a second ago. Max dodged as well, circling around, looking for an opening. Elias fired at the warbeast, but its thick armor absorbed the shots. It barely flinched. Not good. The warbeast turned, its eyes locking onto Max. It lunged, swiping at the dog with a clawed hand. Max jumped back, but the beast was fast. Its claws caught his side, sending him tumbling across the ground. "Max!" Elias's heart stopped for a second. Max staggered to his feet, growling, but Elias could see the wound on his side. The sight of his dog bleeding, because of these monsters, ignited something deep inside him. Rage. Elias didn't think. He moved. He sprinted forward, closing the distance between him and the warbeast in seconds. Before the creature could react, he slid under its guard, grabbing a fallen energy blade from a dead Zirek warrior. Then, with a furious shout, he drove the blade deep into the beast's neck. The warbeast let out a horrible screech, thrashing wildly. Blood sprayed across the stone, thick and dark. Elias gritted his teeth, holding on as the beast tried to shake him off. Max, wounded but still unstoppable, leaped onto the beast's back, biting down on its exposed throat. The warbeast staggered, its massive form crashing into the ground. Then, finally, the arena fell silent for a moment. The remaining Zirek warriors stared in shock. Elias panted, gripping his bloody blade. He reached out and placed a hand on Max's head. The dog wagged his tail, despite the pain. They had won this fight, but they still needed to get out alive. Elias turned toward the massive gate. His victory had bought him a few seconds, and that was all he needed. He ran, Max at his side, dodging a few stray shots from desperate Zirek soldiers. As he reached the gate controls, a familiar voice boomed through the arena speakers. Enough. Elias froze. The voice was deep, cold, filled with authority. And it came from someone far more dangerous than the nobles. A new figure descended from the high balcony, stepping onto the burning arena floor. Tall, broad, clad in dark Zirek armor, this was not a noble. This was a warrior. Elias recognized him instantly. General Zorkan, the undefeated champion of the Zirek military. The general walked calmly through the destruction, stepping over bodies and smoldering debris as if it meant nothing. He stopped a few feet away from Elias and tilted his head. "You have caused quite the spectacle, human," Zorkan said, his voice smooth but laced with menace. "But this ends now." The Zirek warriors rallied at the sight of their general, weapons raised once more. Elias tightened his grip on his blade. His body ached, his ammo was low, and Max was injured. But there was no way in hell he was backing down now. Max growled low, ready to fight despite his wound. Elias took a slow breath and looked Zorkan dead in the eyes. "You want to end this," he said. "Come and try." Zorkan's lips curled into a predatory grin. Then, in a blur of motion, he attacked. The moment Elias saw Max thrown into the arena, he knew something was wrong. The crowd of Zirek nobles burst into laughter, their reptilian voices echoing through the massive Colosseum. They lounged on high balconies, draped in silks and armor, sipping exotic drinks as they mocked the human pet about to fight for their amusement. Max, his loyal German shepherd, stood his ground. His ears were pinned back, his muscles tense, but he didn't cower. He never would. Even as the massive alien beasts across the arena snarled, drool dripping from their fanged maws, Max did not back down. Elias's hands clenched into fists. He had been forced to watch as the Zirek slavers stole Max from him, throwing him into this twisted blood sport. These creatures saw humans as weak pets, nothing more than entertainment. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The announcer, a tall Zirek with golden scales and sharp predatory eyes, raised a hand to silence the crowd. "Behold, our newest amusement," he bellowed. "The pathetic earth creature, forced to face its betters in glorious combat." The crowd cheered. The gates on the opposite side of the arena rumbled open, and two massive alien beasts emerged, each twice the size of Max. One was a four-legged brute with thick, spiked armor running down its back. The other, a serpentine predator, slithered forward on clawed limbs, its many eyes glowing with hunger. Both were killers. Elias felt a cold rage settle in his bones. Max didn't run. He didn't whimper. Instead, he lowered himself into a stance, teeth bared, ready to fight. A cruel laugh came from the noble balcony. "How amusing. Look at it. It thinks it has a chance." Elias took a slow breath. The Zirek thought Max was just an animal. They didn't know. They didn't understand what loyalty meant to a human, A Zerak guard stood nearby, gripping Elias's chains, ensuring their pet didn't escape. He leaned down, sneering. "You should feel honored, human. Your pet dies with glory today." Elias didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on Max. And Max's eyes stayed on him. It was time. The battle began with a thunderous horn blast. The armored brute charged, its massive feet shaking the ground as it barreled toward Max. The crowd roared in excitement, expecting the weak earth creature to be crushed instantly. But Max was faster. At the last second, he dodged to the side, his movements lightning fast. The alien brute's momentum carried it forward, and before it could stop, Max leaped onto its back, his powerful jaws clamping down on the soft flesh between the armor plates. The beast screeched in pain, trying to shake him off, but Max held on, tearing into. The crowd's laughter turned into gasps. The serpentine predator struck next, lunging toward Max with its razor-sharp fangs. Elias tensed. "Move, buddy. Move." At the last second, Max kicked off the brute's back, pushing himself clear just as the serpentine beast sank its fangs deep into its own ally. The armored brute let out a final gurgling roar as poison flooded its veins. The crowd fell silent. Max landed smoothly, circling the last remaining predator, his tail flicking in anticipation. The Zerak nobles weren't laughing anymore. The serpentine creature hissed, coiling itself, preparing for a final deadly strike. And that's when Elias acted. The Zerak guard watching over him had been so distracted by the fight, he didn't see Elias move. In one swift motion, Elias grabbed the guard's belt, pulling free the energy blade strapped to his hip. Before the alien could react, Elias drove the blade into his side and ripped it upward. The guard let out a horrible shriek and crumpled. Elias was free. He grabbed the fallen guard's plasma pistol, spun toward the arena, and fired. The blast struck the serpentine beast in the eye, just as it lunged for Max. It screamed, reeling back in pain, and that was all Max needed. With a burst of speed, he dove in, his powerful jaws clamping down on its throat. The predator thrashed, hissing and gurgling, but Max held on, refusing to let go. He twisted, his grip tightening. And with a sickening crack, the alien beast collapsed, lifeless. The Colosseum fell deathly silent. Max stood victorious, his fur matted with blood, his chest rising and falling as he panted. Elias grinned. The Zerak nobles stared in shock. Their entertainment had turned against them. Then, from above, a slow, mocking clap echoed through the arena. Elias looked up. A new figure had stepped onto the highest balcony. Tall, broad-shouldered, his golden armor gleaming, a Zerak noble of immense power. Valkor, the ruler of this city. He looked down at Elias, a smirk curling across his reptilian lips. "Impressive," he mused, "but you've only delayed the inevitable." Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. Valkor spread his arms. "You have defied our laws. You have embarrassed my people. So now, human." His yellow eyes gleamed with amusement. "What will you do next?" Elias looked around. The Colosseum was still filled with armed guards. The nobles might have been shocked, but the soldiers weren't. They were closing in. Elias exhaled slowly. Then, without a word, he aimed his plasma pistol at the gate controls behind him and fired. The shot blew open the reinforced gate leading to the beast pens. The Colosseum shook as the heavy doors ripped apart, and from within the dark tunnels came the rest of the captive beasts. The Zerak had stolen more than just Max. Now, they were about to pay for it. The moment the gate controls exploded, everything descended into chaos. The Colosseum trembled as the beast pens burst open. From the darkness, creatures of all shapes and sizes roared in fury. The Zerak had collected these predators from across the galaxy, forcing them into bloody battles for entertainment. Now, they were free. A massive four-eyed predator with spiked tendrils lunged at the nearest guard, ripping through his armor like it was paper. A six-legged reptilian brute smashed through the stands, sending Zirak nobles screaming and scrambling to escape. Elias didn't waste time. He vaulted over the barrier separating the arena from the stands, rushing toward Max. His loyal dog's fur was matted with blood, but he was still standing, still ready to fight. "Let's go, buddy," Elias said, kneeling for just a second. Max didn't hesitate. He leaped onto Elias's back, paws gripping his shoulders, just like they'd trained back on Earth. Then blaster fire rained down from the balconies as the guards finally overcame their shock. Blue energy bolts scorched the ground behind him. Elias weaved through the chaos, dodging falling debris, jumping over broken bodies. One guard dropped in front of him, weapon raised. Max launched off Elias's back, teeth sinking into the alien's throat. The Zirak let out a wet gurgle as Max ripped away, leaving him to collapse. Elias grabbed the fallen alien's rifle, spinning to fire at the others. 2 shots, 2 kills. No mercy. A deep rumbling roar echoed behind them. Elias didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew something big had joined the fight. From the corner of his eye, he saw it. A warbeast, one of the largest monsters the Zirak had captured. 12 feet tall, all muscle and armored plating. Its deep red eyes burned with pure rage, and it was charging straight at them. "Max, move." Elias dove to the side just as the beast's massive clawed fist smashed into the ground where they'd been standing. The impact sent stone shrapnel flying. Max darted left, narrowly avoiding a second strike. Elias rolled, came up firing. His rifle blasted against the beast's thick hide, but it barely flinched. Damn it. The thing roared, shaking the entire arena. Its huge hand reached for Elias. Max attacked first. With a burst of speed, he clamped his powerful jaws onto the beast's wrist, sinking his teeth into the soft joint. The monster howled, jerking back in pain. Elias saw his opening. He sprinted forward, leaped onto the warbeast's injured arm, and drove his stolen energy blade deep into its throat. The beast staggered, its roar turning into a wet, choking sound. Then, with one last gurgling breath, it collapsed. Elias landed on the ground beside Max, panting. One less enemy. But they weren't safe yet. More Zirak warriors poured into the arena, their weapons gleaming under the firelight. They weren't running anymore. They were ready to wipe out anything that moved. And at the center of them stood Valkor. The Zirak ruler's golden armor gleamed in the chaos, his expression eerily calm. He watched Elias carefully, as if calculating his next move. Then he raised his hand. "Kill the human," he ordered. A dozen energy rifles aimed at Elias. No time to think. Elias grabbed Max and ran toward the stands. The guards opened fire, but he zigzagged, dodging the shots. The energy blasts ripped apart the stone behind him, but he kept moving. He had one goal: escape. As he climbed the crumbling steps, he caught a glimpse of the noble boxes where the Zirak elite had been enjoying their entertainment. Most had fled, except for one, an old, scared Zirak noble, standing perfectly still. His eyes locked onto Elias. A cold chill ran down Elias's spine. He knew that look. It wasn't fear. It was interest. The noble tapped his wrist console. A second later, a new gate opened. Elias didn't know whether it was a trap or a chance at survival, but he had no choice. He sprinted through the open doorway, Max at his side, and vanished into the darkness beyond. Behind them, the Colosseum burned. And the real fight was. The tunnels were dark, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and rusted metal. Elias sprinted forward, gripping his stolen rifle, his breath coming fast and hard. Max ran beside him, his paws silent against the rough ground, ears twitching at every distant sound. Behind them, the Colosseum burned, the screams of the Zirak and the roars of the escaped beasts blending into a chaotic storm of noise. They had made it out, barely. But now, deep in the underground passages of the Zurich city, they were trapped in unfamiliar territory. Elias didn't slow down. The old Zurich noble who had opened the gate for them. Who was he? Why had he helped? There were too many questions, and no time for answers. The narrow passageway twisted and turned, leading them deeper beneath the city. Somewhere above, Velkor's forces were no doubt mobilizing, preparing to hunt them down. Elias clenched his jaw. They weren't going to be taken alive. A distant hum reached his ears, faint at first, but growing louder. Max's ears flicked up, his posture shifting. They weren't alone. Elias slowed his pace, pressing his back against the rough stone wall. He could hear it now. Footsteps, armored boots clicking against metal. Several of them. A patrol. No, something more deliberate. They weren't searching randomly. They were coming straight for him. Max let out a low, almost silent growl. Elias gave him a quick signal. Stay low, stay ready. The tunnel widened just ahead, opening into a larger chamber. The dim emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows over rusted pipes and old machinery. It looked like some kind of maintenance area, abandoned long ago. Perfect for an ambush. Elias crouched behind a stack of crates, rifle ready. The footsteps grew louder. Then, from the opposite tunnel, figures emerged. 3 heavily armed Zurich soldiers, their weapons drawn, scanning the area with cold efficiency. They weren't regular guards. Their black armor and advanced rifles marked them as enforcers, Velkor's personal executioners. The lead soldier, taller than the rest, turned his head slightly, his slit pupil eyes narrowing. He's here, he hissed. Elias moved first. A single shot from his plasma rifle took down the nearest enforcer, the energy bolt punching through his chest armor. Before the others could react, Max lunged, teeth sinking into the second soldier's arm, twisting hard. The Zurich screeched in pain, dropping his weapon. Elias fired again, one clean shot to the head, and the second enforcer collapsed. The leader was fast. He dodged back, taking cover behind a metal column. "You are cornered, human," he called out, his voice cold. "Surrender, and I will make your death quick." Elias smirked. "Yeah, I was about to say the same thing to you." Before the enforcer could respond, Max darted around the other side, forcing him to move. The instant he did, Elias fired. The blast struck him dead center, sending him crashing against the wall. Smoke curled from his armor as he slumped forward, unmoving. Silence settled over the chamber. Elias exhaled slowly, his heart still pounding. 3 down, but there would be more. There were always more. Max sniffed the air, then let out a small chuff, turning toward another passage leading deeper underground. Elias hesitated for only a second before following. If they went up, they'd run into more soldiers. Down was the only option. The next corridor was older, lined with rusted doors and cracked stone. Elias didn't recognize the architecture. This wasn't part of the modern city. This was ancient, forgotten. He ran his fingers over a faded marking on the wall. Strange symbols, different from the sleek Zurich script. Whatever this place was, it had been buried for a long time. A metallic clang echoed from up ahead. Elias raised his rifle, but before he could react, a shadow stepped into view. The old Zurich noble. Up close, Elias could see the deep scars that ran across his scaled face. His golden eyes studied Elias and Max with something almost like amusement. He wore no armor, only a dark, flowing robe, but there was no mistaking the authority in his posture. This was someone important. "You move well for a pet," the noble said calmly. His voice was deep, steady. "Velkor was a fool to underestimate you." Elias didn't lower his weapon. "Who are you?" The Zurich inclined his head. "An enemy of your enemy." That should be enough for now. Elias didn't trust him. He never trusted anyone. But the noble had led them here, and he hadn't tried to kill them yet. That was something. Max stepped forward, sniffing the air, his body tense but not hostile. The noble looked down at him, then back at Elias. "I know what you seek," he said. "A way out. A chance to fight back. I can give you both." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Why?" The noble smiled, sharp teeth gleaming. "Because Valkor's rule must end. And you, human, might just have the fury to make that happen." From behind him, the passage stretched deeper into the unknown. A choice lay ahead. Elias had never been one to trust strangers, but if this Zirak had information, weapons, a way to strike back, then maybe, just maybe, this was worth the risk. He exchanged a glance with Max. His dog's eyes were steady, waiting for his command. Elias exhaled. "Lead the way." The noble turned without another word, disappearing into the darkness. Elias and Max followed. And above them, in the burning Colosseum, Valkor's forces began their hunt. The underground tunnel stretched far beneath the Zirak city, deeper than Elias had expected. The air was thick with dust, the walls lined with faded carvings that hinted at an older civilization, one long forgotten. The noble moved with quiet confidence, his steps careful but unhurried. Elias and Max followed, their senses sharp, ready for an ambush. Trust was not something Elias gave freely, but for now, this old Zirak was his best chance at survival. They moved in silence for a while, the only sounds the faint hum of power running through unseen conduits and the distant echoes of shifting stone. The deeper they went, the less the tunnels resembled the sleek technology of the Zirak Empire. Here, the walls were rough, carved by hands long gone. Elias ran his fingers along a series of symbols, their meanings lost to time. Finally, the noble stopped before a heavy door made of some ancient alloy. He placed his hand on a panel, and with a low, grinding noise, the door slid open. Beyond it was a vast chamber, dimly lit by flickering energy sources embedded in the walls. The space was filled with equipment, crates stacked high, and rows of old but well-maintained weapons. It wasn't just a hideout. It was an armory. Elias's eyes swept across the room. Rifles, explosives, armor, all of it Zirak made, but modified. This wasn't just a stash. Someone had been preparing for war. He turned to the noble, who watched him with an unreadable expression. "You've been planning this for a while," Elias said. The noble nodded. "Longer than you have been alive, human." He gestured toward the weapons. "Take what you need. Your fight is now my fight." Elias hesitated. "And what do you get out of this?" A slow smile spread across the noble's scared face. "Revenge." Elias didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Revenge was something he understood all too well. He moved toward the weapons, selecting a sleek plasma rifle and a set of reinforced armor. It wasn't human-made, but it would do. He fastened a belt of explosives around his waist, securing them tightly. If Valkor thought he could hunt Elias down like an animal, he was about to learn the truth. Max sniffed the air, ears flicking toward a distant sound. Elias stilled, his grip tightening on his rifle. Then he heard it too, metallic footsteps, dozens of them, moving fast. The hunt had begun. The noble's expression darkened. "They found us." Elias cursed under his breath. How many exits? Only one. Not good. The moment the words left his mouth, the heavy door slammed shut. A second later, a deep voice echoed through hidden speakers, cold and amused. "You ran well, human. But this ends here." Valkor. Elias's blood went cold. The Zirak warlord's voice was unmistakable, dripping with arrogance. A series of metallic thuds followed as detonations rocked the walls, sending dust and debris raining from the ceiling. "They're sealing us in," the noble said, his voice grim. "They mean to bury us alive." Elias's mind raced. Trapped underground with nowhere to run. This was bad. But he wasn't about to roll over and die. His eyes darted to the explosives on his belt. "Then we make our own way out." The noble raised a brow, but there was approval in his gaze. Elias grabbed a charge, set the timer, and hurled it at the far wall. The explosion was deafening. Stone and metal shattered outward, revealing a new passage beyond, a shaft leading up toward the city's lower districts. Their way out. Elias didn't hesitate. Move. Max was the first through, darting into the tunnel. Elias followed, rifle ready, as the noble kept close behind. From behind them, the sounds of approaching Zurek soldiers grew louder. Blaster fire erupted. Energy bolts scorched the walls as Elias spun, firing back, taking down 2 enemies before diving behind cover. The noble moved with surprising speed, a plasma pistol in each hand, firing with deadly precision. Max launched himself at a soldier, taking him down in a single. They fought their way forward, every step a battle. The Zyrek forces were relentless, but Elias had fought worse. He was human. He was trained for this. He would not die here. A final push brought them to the end of the shaft, where an old maintenance hatch led into the city streets. Elias slammed a fist against the rusted controls. The door groaned, then slid open. Cold night air rushed in. Freedom. They didn't stop. Elias and Max burst onto the streets, the noble right behind them. The city was in chaos. Alarms blared. Ships circled overhead, searching. They had only moments before the full force of the Zurek Empire came crashing down. Elias turned to the noble, breathing hard. What now? The old Zurek grinned. Now, we make them pay. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The city was alive with chaos. Sirens blared, searchlights cut through the darkness, and patrol ships roared overhead, scanning every street for their escape. Elias moved swiftly through the narrow alleys, Max close at his side, the old Zurek noble keeping pace despite his age. The air smelled of burning fuel and tension, the kind that only came before an all-out war. They weren't just being hunted. The entire city was preparing for battle. Velkor wasn't taking any chances. He had unleashed his enforcers, the elite troops who answered only to him. They were faster, deadlier, and utterly ruthless. The fact that Elias had survived this long had probably bruised the warlord's ego, but bruised pride meant nothing compared to what was coming. Velkor wouldn't rest until Elias was a corpse, strung up as a warning to any who dared defy him. Elias had no intention of giving him that satisfaction. They reached an abandoned docking bay near the industrial district, slipping through a rusted security gate. The noble led them inside, past crates of old machinery and forgotten cargo. The space was vast, but more importantly, it was hidden from the patrol ships above. For now, at least, Elias knew they wouldn't stay undetected for long. He turned to the Zurek, gripping his rifle. "You got us out," Elias said, his voice low. "Now tell me the plan." The noble studied him for a moment before stepping toward a control panel at the far end of the bay. With a few swift movements, he activated a holo display, revealing a massive structure in the city's heart. It was a fortress, bristling with weapons, shielded by thick layers of reinforced plating. A command center, no doubt where Velkor controlled his forces. "This is the seat of dominion," the noble said, his voice calm but firm. "Velkor's stronghold. Every order, every strike against his enemies, comes from within those walls. If you want to end this, if you want to make him suffer, this is where we strike." Elias exhaled sharply. He had expected a fight. He had wanted a fight. But this, storming the heart of the Zurek Empire with just 3 people and a dog, that was suicide. "You expect us to just walk in there?" Elias asked, shaking his head. "That place is locked down tighter than a warship." The noble's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "Not if we have a distraction." Elias narrowed his eyes. He didn't like the sound of that. What kind of distraction? The noble gestured toward the display, zooming in on a section of the city beneath the fortress. The fuel reserves that powered the city's defenses. If they were to, say, detonate. The resulting chaos would force Velcor to divert his forces. Elias glanced at Max, who let out a soft huff as if unimpressed with the idea. Blowing up a fuel depot. Sure. Simple. Except for the part where they'd have an entire army breathing down their necks. Fine, Elias muttered. But how do we even get close? The noble tapped a few more commands, revealing underground access tunnels leading straight to the storage chambers. The same way we escaped the Colosseum. We move unseen, plant the charges, and leave the Zirac with nothing but fire and panic. Elias ran a hand through his hair, thinking. The plan was reckless. It was dangerous. It was perfect. If they wanted a real shot at taking down Velcor, they needed to hurt him first. And nothing hurt more than losing control. All right, Elias said finally. Let's do it. They moved fast. There was no time to waste. Slipping through the city's underbelly, they made their way toward the fuel reserves, weaving through abandoned tunnels and forgotten maintenance shafts. Every step was a gamble. One wrong turn, and they'd be dead before they even reached. Elias led the way, rifle ready, Max moving like a shadow beside him. The noble followed, his old but sharp eyes scanning every corner. The deeper they went, the more the walls pulsed with energy, the faint hum of machinery filling the silence. They were getting close. Then the alarms triggered. A high-pitched wail echoed through the tunnels, flashing red lights bathing the walls in an eerie glow. Elias cursed under his breath. They had tripped a security sensor. Move, he barked, picking up the pace. Heavy boots thundered behind them. The Zirac enforcers had found them. Plasma shots whizzed past, scorching the walls as Elias dove into cover. Max growled low, his muscles tense, waiting for the right moment to strike. The noble fired first, 2 precise shots dropping the lead soldier. Elias followed up with a burst from his rifle, cutting down another. But there were too many. They had to run. This way. The noble veered left, leading them through a narrow passage. They burst into the fuel depot, a vast chamber filled with towering storage tanks and humming power conduits. The whole place reeked of volatile chemicals. One spark, and everything would go up in flames. Elias didn't hesitate. He pulled the explosives from his belt, setting charges against the main pipeline. Max stood guard, growling at the approaching footsteps. The Zirac were closing in. Just a little more. Elias muttered, setting the last charge. Then, a new voice echoed through the chamber. Impressive. Elias froze. Slowly, he turned. Velcor stood at the far end of the room, flanked by his enforcers. Unlike before, there was no amusement in his expression, only cold fury. His golden armor gleamed under the emergency lights, and in his hand, he held a long, curved blade. Elias met his gaze, his hand tightening around his rifle. You've caused enough trouble, human, Velcor said, but it ends here. Elias smirked. Funny. I was about to say the same thing. Before Velcor could react, Elias slammed his fist onto the detonator. The explosion tore through the depot, fire and smoke erupting in a blinding wave. The impact threw everyone off their feet, Zirac soldiers screaming as the flames devoured everything. Elias hit the ground hard, ears ringing. He barely had time to move before Max was at his side, tugging at his sleeve, urging him to get up. The whole city trembled. Above them, the fortress's power grids short-circuited, plunging the upper levels into darkness. Panic spread through the Zirac ranks. Velcor staggered to his feet, coughing through the smoke. His golden armor was scorched, his eyes burning with hatred. But before he could react, Elias was already running. They had one shot at getting to the fortress. And now it was vulnerable. Max barked, leading the way as they sprinted toward the next phase of the fight. Velcor had underestimated humanity, and he was about to